Sure, sorry. Hi, everybody. Hello. Please find your seats. Hi.
Yeah. I think they've learned about that.
Oh, cool.
Hello. Paata.
It's a long time.
I know, I love it. We can do that in front of everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Najum. I am the managing director here at Synetic Theater, and we are so honored to be hosting this series and participating tonight. Many thanks to Timothy, who happened to put 2 and 2 together that both companies were adapting the same original text in almost the opposite way. And you know, we're
very
closing,
careful planning,
right? And we're closing the day after you guys open. It's you know, the epitome of fortuitousness. So so glad to be hosting it here. And so I'd like to introduce our panelists, moderator Timothy Nelson, artistic director of in-series, Sybil Williams, the adapter of Stormy Weather, and the creator and director of our Tempest, Paata Tsikurishvili. Let's give them a round of applause.
Good evening, friends.
Do we need more light? I can work on that.
As Jason said, my name is Timothy Nelson. I'm artistic director of in-series. And I want to extend it's not.
You just have to flip the switch.
Oh, I see. The on switch is.
I was going to say just talk.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Well, I've been catcalled at previous directors' slots for being too soft. So, my name is Timothy Nelson. I'm artistic director of in-series, and I'm so pleased to be able to welcome you to this collaborative director salon, and to extend a thank you to Jason and Paata for having us here. It's really wonderful to have a community in DC's theater scene where we can do things like this, even if they are accidental coincidences. As many of you know, we at the in-series have been doing directors salons for many years, and last year we changed the format to be a place for diverse voices from different backgrounds to come together and to discuss the themes of a given production, and to through that process find the interconnectedness of what we do. This year we've loosened that a bit and are sort of shaping each director's salon to be specific to what issues the production we're working on raises. In our last production, Butterfly, we did 2 director's salon, one on race in opera and one on gender in opera. And part of that was talking about what it means that in opera we work from a canon of problematic pieces. And I have to admit, at the end, I left, as I imagine some of the audience did, saying, why don't we just throw out the canon and start all over? Why do we perform from a canon? And about the same time, I discovered that Synetic was doing Tempest. And I thought, well, here's a perfect opportunity to get together with another company. There's nothing more canonical than Shakespeare. And to say, we're both doing the Tempest. We're both doing the Tempest without a word of Shakespeare in it. What does that mean? And we're taking radically different interpretive directions with it. And this is a chance to have a conversation about how canonical works we perform just because they can yield all these different interpretations. I want to briefly read the bios of our 2 panelists. I should also say, usually we have a much bigger group of panelists, and I thought for this it'd be really nice just to have the 2 creative brains behind a given production in conversation with each other and to do something slightly more intimate. To my left is Paata Tsikurishvili. I practiced. Jason helped me. I have to admit.
Amazing.
Who is an innovative, award-winning international artistic director, and educator with more than 30 years of experience fusing classical elements of drama, movement, dance, pantomime, and music. Since Synetic Theater's founding in 2001, he has received an impressive 25 Helen Hayes Award nominations and has won the award 9 times. Together with his wife and co-founder Irina, he was named Washingtonian of the Year in 2013. He's directed and performed in Hamlet, The Rest is Silence, The Master and Margarita, The Crackpots, Dracula, Host and Guest, Frankenstein, and The Island of Dr. Moreau. He's directed over 60 productions. All for Synetic?
Yeah, 90%.
Oh, wow, yes. That's amazing. Synetic's inaugural production, Hamlet, The Rest is Silence, received 3 Helen Hayes Awards for Outstanding Director, Outstanding Resident Play, and Outstanding Choreographer. As an educator, he has trained hundreds of actors in movement technique through Synetic Theater and has taught at leading universities such as American University Catholic University of America and Georgetown University. Before moving to the USA, he founded Mimedrama Theater in Germany and has toured worldwide. Paata holds an MFA in film directing from Tbilisi State University and a BFA in acting from the State University of Theater and Film in Georgia. And to my right, Sybil Williams is a playwright and dramaturg who currently teaches in both the musical theater program and critical race and gender studies collaborative, where she served as program director for the African American and African diaspora studies. Her latest play, this is almost not correct. Her latest play, I Am a Drum, was presented as part of Fresh Theater's inaugural season in March 2016. Gloria and Rhonda will be performed by Fresh Theater in 2019, was performed in July 2019. As a dramaturg, her latest projects include a new musical titled UGLY, Ugly, at Sigwork's Summer Musical Theater Development Series, and a new hip-hop musical at New York City's Flea Theater titled Cinching Inc., which premiered at Houston's Alley Theater in January 2017. She most recently worked at Signature Theater as dramaturg on The Scottsboro Boys in June 2018. Would you join me in please welcoming our guests? I always begin these panels the same way. Usually it yields very different questions. I ask my panelists why X, so why physics, why poetry, why brain science, why opera. Since we have two theater makers, it's the same question, which I think is fascinating. And I wonder if you guys could share us just a little bit about your background and why theater.
Okay, you can have your own. So why theater? I mean, I don't think I had much choice because I was 9 when I started. My parents put me up in Tbilisi, capital of Georgia. There was a children's theater that I was basically stunned when I saw the production first time. It was professional, it was enchanting, and I wanted to just sign up for the classes. And since then, I've never stopped. Simple as that.
And here we are.
And here we are.
Similarly, I actually remember my first performance. I was a teddy bear in our second grade school play. So I remember that very distinctly, and similarly, never stopped. The other thing that I love about theater and why I keep going, it's a dual reason now, because as I study more and more African American studies, Africana studies, cultural studies, I realize that theater is a way of having an intimate conversation with a group of people. And there are a lot of ways to talk about race and culture that you can invite people in with theater that you can't really do with other forms. So it becomes really important to me as a person interested in African American, Africana culture to say, here we are, in a way that's most inviting, and to allow people to engage us in a space that says, you're welcome.
I thought to put us, I'm going to try this without. I thought to put us all on the same page. I'm going to very quickly give a history of The Tempest so that we can talk about the play in a way that everyone understands. The Tempest is written in 1611. It is not Shakespeare's last play, and it's not his farewell to theater, but it is a very late play, and it's the last complete play that he wrote. It opens with a storm, hence the name The Tempest, in which we learn that a ship has been destroyed and everyone on it has been killed. And after that scene, we realize that is not true at all. We meet Prospero, who tells us the storm was just a fantasy, a conjuring of his. He's on an island with his daughter, and through a conversation with his daughter, we learn that 12 years ago, he was Duke of Milan. He escaped being usurped, or he was usurped and escaped death with his daughter. There was a storm. He landed on this island. He met its native people, including a figure named Caliban, who was at first a friend of his, and then later he tells us everything we learned through Prospero. So we don't know what's true or not, but Prospero tells us that Caliban made an attempt on the chastity of Miranda, and he was then enslaved. We also know that Prospero has another servant or slave named Ariel, who 12 years before had been a tree and had been imprisoned as a tree for another 12 years by Sycorax, who is the mother of Caliban and was the previous ruler of this island. Prospero tells us that she's from Algeria. Prospero tells us that she is a blue-eyed hag, and Prospero tells us that she is dead. That is the bulk of the pre-story. And then the play itself has the shipwreck had the King of Naples and the brother who usurped Prospero on it, and it is a classic revenge. It starts as a classic revenge tragedy, which was very common in early modern theater, except at the end, all is forgiven, which is what makes it unique and what makes it a romance instead of a tragedy. That being said, I wonder, and I've been wanting to ask you this since I saw the production, because you do so much Shakespeare.
Yeah.
With your particular approach, movement-based approach to it, where do you dramaturgically start with a play, particularly Tempest, but with Shakespeare in general?
It's interesting that you just described the story and the pre-story, and then honestly, in the early version, we did stage those stories, including Sycorax putting Ariel in a tree and the whole relationship, but we had to narrow down because then it became lengthy, and then it's a timing. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like, Shakespeare has been translated in many languages. So I read it in Georgian, and it feels very much Georgian because of the themes. And I believe it feels same way everywhere because it's such a human nature-based stories, not to mention historic plays and so on. And the thing is, like, it inspires artistic mind differently. Like, you paint picture with your words, and then the words are also sparking same story in different media. So it's movement or visual, doesn't really matter. It's like what really inspires you. What's the subtext? Is any little images that like can spark and tell the story with the one image, basically elaborate like 1,000 words together. I mean, it's all imagery. It's all about what words are doing to you, if it makes sense. So when you read something and then something is going on with us, either emotionally or we have mind's eye working differently. Perhaps because I've studied film directing and my thinking is more like visuals, fragmented, so envisioning everything. So Shakespeare is very helpful there. Describes things really well. Relationship is strong. The characters and then storyline is already there. So it allows us, artists like us, I would say, that telling the story without words, to just go beyond words or beneath the words and try to get the same message out, perhaps differently, but the same story, same feeling, and maybe same emotions that you are experiencing while you're reading. So it's kind of hard to describe how to paint the picture. I don't know.
But you think about making the story into an image.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, the symbolism, let's put it this way, there's so much symbolism in Shakespeare, so I don't want to describe it. We all know that. And the symbolism also is part of our lives nowadays. It's without symbols, our communication probably will be nowhere. Very simple example. Big yellow M. You see her reaction, what that means. So it sparks something in your head. You know it's McDonald's, and the whole menu runs in your head. So the one image gives you thousands of information, lots of information, and everybody's also getting differently. Even taste runs in your mouth. I mean, that's how powerful is the symbols. And the same thing is in the Shakespeare. You know, when we talk about the poetry, like, what that means visually. So how we create visual poetry, and that's the process to find out how we do it.
So it's interesting that I want to pivot to the same question for Sybil, but it's interesting you mention symbols because until the 20th century, the symbols in the Tempest were read as Prospero as a sort of everyman or as a stand-in for Shakespeare, and Caliban as his earthly side and Ariel as the ethereal side, or on a macro level that Caliban is earth and water and Ariel is fire and air, and it's about man controlling. It's this very late Renaissance human. And then in the 20th century, all of a sudden people said, well, what if the only character isn't Prospero? What if Prospero is only one side of the equation? And then we got this reading of it being about colonialism and slavery. So the same question for you, Sybil, where do you start dramatically dramaturgically reinterpreting any piece of Shakespeare, but particularly.
I love what Paata said about symbols and language, because that's exactly where I go. There, even the image of Prospero with this cloak and this stick that he summons all of the sort of forces of nature around him is, for me, for some people, it's this wonderful symbol of magic, right? He's this powerful magic person. For me, it's a conqueror. And so what does that mean?
Power.
So yeah, exactly. So for me, it starts with how language has been used against certain people and how to marginalize certain people. So you say M, big golden M, to somebody that's hungry, and not only conjures McDonald's, it conjures all the things they can't have, right? So I start to think about that. Like when we start to think about how blue-eyed hag, so much comes to mind with that. Is this a woman who's just got horrific blue eyes and is completely unattractive? Or do we take the Renaissance meaning that she's somebody who escaped hanging because she was pregnant? Was she Algerian pregnant and escaped hanging? What does all of this mean? What does it mean? So I want to look behind the language and find out who's been marginalized, who's been left out by this language, who's been let in by this language, because that always is important when we start talking about people who've been colonized or marginalized. Like how does language play a part in that? For African people, the first step towards slavery was to strip them of language. And that's what Caliban is railing against. He is coming to Prospero saying, you have something that belongs to me, but I don't even have the language to explain to you what you've taken. And so it's this conversation that, how do I get prayers, which is what Sycorax says. How do I get the prayers back into my mouth? How do I take back language? But more than anything, how do I make you understand what it means to be me? How do I get you to that point? So there's that. And the other part of it is, in the African tradition, all magic is word magic, right? So you hear even people like from the Caribbean, like Bob Marley, say life and death are born on the tongue. What a man say, make him live. What a man say, make him die. So the way in which language is used decides who lives and how they live and who doesn't. And so how do we begin to negotiate the power of language when we know it has that much power?
Can we go further and talk a bit about Prospero? Because in our original version, there wasn't going to be a Prospero. We now do have a Prospero, but originally it was about giving linguistic agency to Sycorax, finally, who in Shakespeare's play Sycorax doesn't appear or have any text. And last season we opened with a King Lear, sort of King Lear, a one-person King Lear that was a woman, and you've also cast Prospero as a woman. And for me, that was about, in the words of Lady Macbeth, unsexing Lear and making Lear into an every person. So I wonder if maybe we can talk about the different approaches you both took to Prospero and how choosing a woman informed the character and how we came to the decision to have a Prospero.
Okay. Honestly, right during the first rehearsal for the Tempest, Philip Fletcher, who used to be original Prospero in a previous production, he had a knee problem. He needed to go and do surgery. He needed to take her. So and then it was, for me, that was moment that, like, first, of course, like, what do we do? And then, as always, we took it as an opportunity, and then instead of fixing it, we changed it. And I think casting Irina in it, it brought a lot of new dimension to it. So number one, it's a different psychological flow, because female psychology is completely different. Emotional depth is completely different. Moral, it's completely different. Pain, stronger than male. Forgiveness, stronger than male. I mean, that's how it worked out and laid out perfectly. And simply mother defending own kid. I don't think father can come close to it when it gets really that far. So, and you know, that even like the instinct base or just intellectual base in every aspect, every angle really kind of landing in a spot itself. Because it's also accident, it's like coincident that like last version, Antonio, we casted female and we had Antonia, sister. And now both sisters,
Really?
it
Wow.
became matriarch rivalry, kind of two sisters against each other. So totally different dimension. So, and then the other day I mentioned to our team that like end of after opening, I was moved to tears exactly when the forgiveness moment happened. It's a very simple, I don't know why, and then when I became so sensitive, I don't know, but like I was moved because that very authentic emotional flow of the mother. So I think we know best what mother means. I mean, we as males know best what mother really means. So that moved me.
Right.
So forgiveness and motherly approach, I mean, it's all kind of stuff.
And Arena is astounding.
Oh no, I mean,
Amazing.
yes.
She's-
I mean, there is a reason why I married her. Yeah, she's always been my muse and she's still my muse, and that's what it is.
Amazing.
She always excites me.
Nice.
And how did we end up with Prospero?
Because the actor demanded it. That's
So
why.
I hear you. Yes, I know how that works.
Actually, what we found in trying to have a Sycorax as the protagonist to attempt to explain what this usurpation has meant to her, what it meant to come back to this kingdom and try and reclaim everything that had been hers, seemed almost pointless if the person who usurped it wasn't there. So it really was like, okay, I have to confront the person who actually is responsible for what this is. The other part of it is that if we're actually having a conversation about colonialism and the possibility of redemption and understanding, you have to address the person who is the symbol of a colonizer, and that was Prospero. And to really have the conversation about why you need to understand who I am and why I have to have the things that you took returned to me, and why I can't just take them back. You have to be willing to give them to me. Why it's important for you to return what you took freely. We needed somebody in that space who could actually hold that moment and have that conversation. So that's why we ended up with a Prospero.
I always write more questions than we ever get to, and one of my last questions has to do with redemption, and I was going to save it, but since you both brought it up, I'm going to skip there and hopefully get back. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paata, in your version, so in Shakespeare, redemption comes because Ariel convinces Prospero to offer redemption. Do I remember right then, your version, it comes solely from Prospero?
Yeah,
Prospero.
Prospera, yes. When Prospero really hits the emotional peak, so to speak, to destroy her sister, and this is the moment when she sees Miranda in love, embraced with Ferdinand, and that stops her. And then as a mother, she becomes more tender and then goes towards the forgiveness. So I think again, this is the moment. For some reason, I do believe that like perhaps we as a male, we cannot snap out from the critical moment.
I see. So
But-
because it was a woman, perhaps
Because
it didn't need Ariel's
yes,
intervention.
yes. I mean that was the way it shaped up, and I did not change it because those small details and moments for visual storytelling, you don't really have to stick with the original.
Mhm.
It's still adaptation. There is no text in it, but there's some tweaks. It's like we allow ourselves to tweak it around, so to speak, because it was very truthful moment itself. And from dramaturgical point of view also, then I had to invent few more scenes to make Ariel stopping her, and then why she stopped. And it kind of chain reaction, you need a lot of 10, 15 minutes to add. So it's kind of all together. So my instincts was telling me that is simple. Simpler is best. Simply, she just stops. And then slowly you see how she transforms from monster feelings, like ready to crush, and then how slowly she melts into forgiveness and redemption, and she becomes sweet and even more powerful after that,
Yeah.
forgiving it. And that's what, in the end, King Alonza, when she goes like, lifts him up, and then she shows their kids. So that kind of brings it together to me. That's
Right.
It's interesting that you say she becomes softer, and it's motherhood that allows the softening, that allows the same thing happens in our stormy weather. It is it is Sycorax who has all the power to undo all of this, but chooses not to because of Caliban.
Yeah.
Caliban is the child that belongs to her, and she says, I won't destroy what is his. And so it's Caliban who teaches her how to come back to a place of acceptance and love, and she teaches him things as well. So it's still that motherhood principle of, at the end of the day, Prospero isn't really the concern here. It's mother and son, and what that's going to mean, and why they need to reconcile together to solve this problem. And Ariel has also been given charge of our Ariel has been given charge of our little Caliban from childhood, because our Sycorax wasn't totally interested in being a mother. Caliban's needs had to teach her to be a mother. So Ariel was given charge of Caliban, and in our stormy weather, Ariel can't be bothered with children. So Ariel is like a good time person. Like, oh, no, I got my bar, I got my drinks, you go do that somewhere else.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it is Sycorax who brings them all together as her own. And that's where the redemption comes. This mother reclaims everything that's her own.
So what can I
It's
ask?
interesting. In early stages, before we launched rehearsals back in 2012, so I was really attracted into Caliban and Sycorax's relationship and the character, and I almost wanted to do just like his point of view. And then you can tell influence here. I toned down, but still you see that influence that it's almost like became Caliban's kind of storytelling in general, because he's the one who stays alone on the island in my version with that magic book.
I wonder if we can transition talking about Caliban through this. So this idea of forgiveness and redemption has been a lot on my head, a lot of people's heads up this week with Botham John's brothers, forgiveness. And I feel like the redemptive moment in stormy weather is a little more obscure. And I just wonder if part of that thinking, or what, when we're talking about forgiveness for epigenerational crimes like enslavement and colonization, how does redemption fall in there? What sort of redemption is possible?
I think redemption comes in acknowledging your role in any kind of oppression. And that's not gendered, that's not raced, that's not in any way ethnicized, for lack of a better word. That's in the everyday choices that we make as human beings who live in particular systems, to acknowledge I am a part of the system. And what does that mean? What does it mean that I engage the privileges of the system? What does it mean that those privileges sometimes marginalize other people? What kind of steps can I take to make sure that I am making the best choices I can make every day? And sometimes that's the only place, that's all redemption can look like. It can't look like forgiveness, one, because you can't forgive people for epigenerational crimes. You just can't do that. But you can agree to make a better society. You can do that. So it's how do we begin to face what we are and to face history. I think one of the amazing things about our stormy weather, our tempest, is it's about facing history. And this country has an incredibly difficult time doing that, facing history. And everybody says it, from W.B. Du Bois to James Baldwin. I mean, they all, if we don't face history, we can't move forward. And now we're even in a time where We don't know what history is. Oh, that's not history. That's fake news, or that's post-truth, or those aren't facts. These are the real facts. I'm going to rewrite history so they suit this set of political facts because, all history is politics. No, it actually isn't. I mean, the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor, I may see it a particular way, but it happened. It's a fact. What I choose to do in terms of how I look at ethnicity, different peoples, and concentration camps is one thing, but I can't change the fact that the incident happened. And so we've got to begin to think about what are the facts here? How do we approach these facts in a way that transforms all of us for the better? Is there a way possible to do that? And that's what redemption is, I think.
So moving to Caliban and Sycorax, actually, who's our main character, you early on decided that not only that Sycorax was the mother of Caliban, that Prospero was the father of Caliban. And so I wonder if on one end we can talk about our Caliban and even our performer doing Caliban, and why we made that choice, and how Caliban figures into this story. And on the other end, you include Sycorax as well, which I was overjoyed to see. So if we can maybe talk about Sycorax as a character and Caliban as a character, and what their relation to the larger narrative is.
And ours, Caliban is the son of Prospero and the daughter of Sycorax. So he is the son of a woman who has traveled through time under different guises, always as a African woman, moving through time, always in the same sort of position as African woman, very powerful African woman. And Prospero, a white male, actually from a continental white male. Caliban is their child. And Caliban's primary problem is, where do I belong? I've got my mother's history and gifts, but I've got my father's need for organizational control. What do I do with these things? How do I negotiate being a child of both of these, if you will, cultural, social, political approaches to things? How do I do? And he wants his father's love and his mother's understanding. Like he wants, well, reverse it. He wants his mother's love and his father's understanding. And his father wants no part of him because he doesn't need him. He doesn't need Caliban. And his mother is like, I don't know what to do with you because you remind me of a history that I don't want to be reminded. So what does this child of both worlds, if you will, do? And it's almost a metaphor for the diaspora. Like, what do we do with Africa? What do we do with continental Europe when we belong to both and neither? Mm-hmm. How do we negotiate this? So that's what our Caliban's role is. And our Sycorax is trying to help him negotiate that, almost unwittingly.
And for me, actually, the idea for this production started with, in the Lear we did, I included the line, "This thing of darkness, I acknowledge mine," which is in the context of the play doesn't mean as much as it can mean out of the context of the play, but it's a huge line, and maybe the most powerful line in the piece. This idea that we're owning it not only as a person, but as a stain upon our humanity. And what about Sycorax and your job? I was and that Prospero is not the mother of Sycorax.
No.
But in a way is the adopted mother.
It becomes like a stepmother.
Yeah.
In our version, I mean, again, I had to already cut down the staged sequences of Caliban and Sycorax because then was the path that I had to maintain throughout. So then I had to shorten it and then go with a more metaphorical storytelling. And then we have Sycorax only 2 times. So in the beginning, you see how viciously she's depending on the child. It's also kind of metaphorical that Prospero is by accidentally killing her because of she was defending on kid. At the same time, Prospero also had own kid there. So that was kind of moment that like sometimes nature puts you in a position that like you don't have time to think about, but to react first. So that was kind of moment. And then in the middle of production somewhere we have when Caliban tastes that alcohol, gets a little drunk, and he tells the story about mother. And then we have flashback. And then we see that like, how mother was teaching the first steps, how to just survive, how to be, how to hunt, how to this, it's like a basic motherhood. So, and then you see that he was missing that so much. And then yet, even though he was with Prospera, somewhere deep in the heart, he doesn't trust her.
It sort of re-triggers his
Yes,
rage.
yes.
I'd say for me, the most moving part of the show was actually in the beginning when Prospero kisses Caliban's head from behind, and I thought that was that's so touching. And would only have worked with a woman.
And then her perspective also was when she realized what happened, that what she's done it, for whatever reason, then she started suffering herself. She got hurt. She knew that was not her intention. So that's the human kind of, again, motherhood elements, metaphorically, was really strong.
Right. I wonder if we can talk now about Ariel. Ariel. Because I think there's also a beautiful accidental, but not accidental as these things are, synergy between our two productions. These two pianos, of course, are just a prelude to the piano on the stage that spurts water. That's amazing. The piece is very musical. It's very lyrical in that way. And in our version, though the actor playing Ariel will speak a bit, he largely communicates as through the songs of Billie Holiday. It's a musical language. This, of course, comes from Shakespeare because all the songs in The Tempest are Ariel songs, Full Fathom Five, and so on. So there's already a lyricism about the character. But in a way, they're common in this in that. In the other way, they couldn't be more different. You have a man who's very charismatic and big, larger than life personality.
Yes.
Ours is also a man, but a man dressed as Billie Holiday. So because there's always been this gender fluidity in the character of Ariel, we chose to have a female impersonator playing Billie Holiday. I wonder if you could both just talk about the role of Ariel in your two perspectives on the piece.
Yeah, of course. Ariel is another supernatural character that each time there is the opportunity to really work around with the supernatural, it works for us because of our vocabulary to tell the story, and especially Alex Mills, guy who has no bones, basically. He moves around, and then he has this kind of transcendent quality, so to speak, and he transforms in front of you and he moves you. So the metaphor for us became more like, it's, to me, especially the latest production, the way it's shaped up, it's almost like the Prospera's internal sound, internal feeling, internal world. When there's example, when Ariel emerges from the water, the old version with the projection, we used to have the projection in the old version, we had that surreal tree kind of shape that he was in it. But for this production, there's no projection. We just went through basic, simple artwork, and then he emerges from the water. So he became water for us. Same time, because it's, of course, it's water everywhere. So it makes sense. And then when he emerges from the water, if you remember, first time Ariel sees piano, he goes very lyrical, very poetic feeling, and goes like, sorry to Prospera, and goes like, my God, I missed you so much, long time. And then he activates. And then the whole fountain comes out of it, if you remember that. And then he starts playing the music with these water streams. And that's when we have Prospero gets deep in, sinks in her thinking. It's the flashback, and then it becomes her personal feeling and emotion. So metaphorically, that's, to me, it's a Prospera's internal world. So she needed internally also to be able to tell her own self, so this is time to forgive, or this is good, or this is bad. And in the end, if you noticed that, like, she releases him, and then he vanishes underneath the piano, and the piano goes shut down again. He's gone. and the prosperous also living. So it's a metaphorical, it's a surreal, I call that, I use often that word, but that's what it is. It's a surreal storytelling, gives you room for different interpretation, and it depends you as an individual, how you meet this moment right now, that's how you're taking it. So it's like very different perspective for everybody. So it's not like that's like what it is, but it gives you the room to imagine by your own. So where that goes. I don't know. I love a surreal approach. It has some power in it. It creates for audience such a moment that like it evolves you without you knowing it, sucks you into production and makes you part of it because you're instantly thinking to articulate those visual imagery and emotional flow same times and process it throughout your brain, so you're becoming part of it instantly. It transforms you, right? I mean, it has this kind of magic. I don't know. So I don't know how to explain, but I'm trying to give it some
I think in
hint.
the same way pure music does.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the music. I'll say that the music for nonverbal productions, that's our script, because everything is synced up with the music. And I always say that when we all together will become a music itself, then we are all set. So that's the goal towards polishing the production, that like every single moment is with music. The music is what creates that atmosphere and emotional flow in general.
Opera without any singing.
Opera, it's I read it, somebody quoted as visual opera.
Yeah.
So like, I'll take it. It makes sense. It makes sense.
Sybil, I came to you. You were so brave. I came to you and said, "Tempest, Sycorax, Billie Holiday, played by a man. Go."
Yeah, right.
But I wonder if you could talk about Ariel, also about Billy, and
Sycorax.
and also referencing back to the actor playing Caliban.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, Quincy Jones did a Messiah album that at once was Messiah and at the same time was chronicling the history of black music. So it started with drumming and ended with
Messiah.
ended with rap by the end. I think it was the late 1980s. In the same way, I mean, we have a hip hop artist doing African drumming, and we have jazz in the middle with Billie Holiday. It's also a sort of exploration of black music. Not that we intended it that way in the beginning, but I wonder if you could just talk to that.
Our play Ariel is an ancestral spirit enchanted by Sycorax to only sing Billie Holiday songs, and there's a reason for that. Two of them actually. Our play takes place over a very long period of time. So it starts in 1858. Actually, it starts in 1610, then goes to 1858, then goes to 1925, then goes to 1930, and then 1959 is where we land. And 1959 is, we're talking about all the coming changes in America, but in actual fact, where this action is located is Sea Islands, Georgia. So they're on this small, uninhabited island on the sea, in the Sea Islands, barrier islands of Georgia, moving, and Sycorax is moving through time. And some of these lifetimes are so hard for her that she can't hold the memories. So what she does is place them inside Billie Holiday's songs. And the songs are spells. And they work in two ways. They work in that Prospero's Waterfront Bar and Grill, which is the grill he's usurped from Sycorax, keeps customers and are well maintained by Ariel singing Billie Holiday. So when customers come, there's this enchantress, Ariel, singing these wonderful songs, but what she's actually doing is holding Sycorax's memories and enchanting the patrons of the club with spells that make them stay and drink and have a good time. So all of that is happening. But what's most important about the music here is that the music is the memories that Sycorax holds as she's moving through time. So when we hear drumming, she's on a slave ship, and that's what she hears, and that's what she shuts down very quickly. Like Ariel knows not to do that unless she really wants to have that memory. Like, don't take that out. Then there's certain Billie Holiday songs that she will sing so that Ariel's Sycorax say, yes, I do want that memory. This is a great song. Let's have that here. Or she'll really give Ariel a sharp look like, don't sing that. Don't do that ever again. And there are times when Caliban is also singing. Caliban does not sing Billie Holiday. Caliban sings African rhythms and speaks to African songs because that's what he knows. And also in our production, we use actual hoodoo spells. Sycorax is a hoodoo healer. So Caliban drums and he speaks in the language of spells, like how to make a mojo lucky handbag, how to heal somebody from a broken heart. You take a jar of 5-finger grass, 6 rose petals, da, 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 da. And he's doing this to music, but he doesn't know where he got it. He doesn't know how he understands it until much later in the play. So music is not just, is something that fills time. It chronicles Sycorax's memories, and it also serves as spells and potions for the people on stage and in the audience. So it's a lot happening with music.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to sort of roll my last 2 questions into one large question and then hopefully open it up to our audience for questions. I want to ask about how you two end your productions. Sybil, it occurred to me today when I was thinking through what we could talk about tonight. Shakespeare wrote The Tempest in 1611. This year, of course, we celebrate 1619 and the arrival of enslaved peoples in the Americas. Colonization and enslavement wasn't new in 1611, but it was certainly new to the consciousness of the wider public and Shakespeare. So he sort of expresses, I think in the text, I sense an anxiety about colonization, but it's iffy how he feels about it, but he certainly doesn't seem completely comfortable with it, and about slavery. You're having a conversation with Shakespeare 400 plus years later, when we can see the costs of colonization and the costs of human slavery. And I wonder if you could talk about what talking to Shakespeare from before the fact and now after the fact is like, and how you chose to end the piece. And then Paata, your ending started to remind me of the Mark Lamos' famous production ends with Prospero leaving all the tools of colonization and leaving to go back to Milan. And Caliban picks them up and puts them on. And we see him become the cruel colonizer, that sort of violence is inherited and taught. And I thought that's where you were going at the end, and then all of a sudden it ends with a beautiful picture of hope. So I wonder if both of you could take a turn and talk about why and how you decided to end your pieces in the way you did.
I actually end in some ways where I began, and what Caliban is speaking is a litany of activities that began in 1959. So in 1959, we get the beginning of civil rights movement. We get Brown versus Board of Education, Montgomery bus boycotts. We get all that stuff, and Prospero's like, something's coming. I got to get out of here. Something's changing. I don't know what this is, and I don't know if I like it. And Caliban just kind of keeps speaking it to him. By the time we get to the end, it's hit because Sycorax has returned with all of this stuff from the world, and she is demanding a reckoning. Like, this is the world that's coming. 59 is also the year Billie Holiday died, and she was present at Billie Holiday's death. And she saw a woman who even in death was still persecuted. And she's like, I'm going to carry on because this person couldn't. The world that you made is ending and I'm here. And I want an acknowledgement of that. And so that's where, will she get it? Is kind of where I like, what are you going to do now that she's made this demand? And for me, it's very much me having a conversation with Shakespeare, because as an African descended woman who's been doing these plays for hundreds of years and celebrating 1619 and thinking about all kinds of colonized, marginalized people in the world, I mean, just the advent of this acknowledgement of indigeneity and the danger that our planet is in. Having to say to someone like Shakespeare, we're here. What intrigues me about this play more than anything is that he wrote it because there had been a shipwreck in Bermuda, and Bermuda was new, and the people there were curiosity. It's like, no, we're not curiosities. We're here.
Well,
We've
one of the
been-
great lines is Miranda saying, "Oh, brave
with a
new world that has such people in it," and Prospero says, "'Tis new to you."
Right, right. Like it isn't, but at the same time, it was new to Shakespeare, and it was new to his audiences, and it was a place of sort of, it was like our Star Trek and Star Wars. Like, I don't know what's out there, but I'm going to throw everything at you. And we're saying we were here, and we've been here. We've been here in all kinds of ways, and there's a large conversation we could have about slave trade routes and the involvement of Elizabeth's England and all of that. But for me, it is reckoning with Shakespeare. It's I'm here writing into your text. I'm writing into it, and I'm expanding it. So what do you do with that?
In our version, I think it's more, I kept simple and open-ending. The hoping end, that simply what you see is he is left alone on this island, but there is a book that he picks up. So metaphorically, there is a knowledge, there is an experience that he's taken with, but what he's gonna do, it's up to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
giving over to the
It's
audience.
yeah, it's always he just goes like, if there is a technical issues, he closes the book. if there is no technical issue and the book lights up, he just blows out and blows out the light. So it gives you room for the interpretation in general, like is the hope or what he's gonna do after that. So it's like somebody I remember commented, we had a Q&A, that like he said like it reminded me when the Brits left Hong Kong. I'm like, huh? So I never thought about it, but I mean it gives you room that everybody has own way to interpret it.
One is very Shakespearean
It's
in,
very-
in the whole "lend me your
Yeah,
hands,"
exactly.
suddenly communicating with the audience in
Yes.
the last. My friends, do you have any questions?
I know you mentioned the importance of the music. Is the music set at the time you start the first rehearsals?
It's like a chicken and egg question. Which one is first? It depends. Sometimes we do have some of the music. For example, the director's cut. That's what Constantine is calling from previous production. And suddenly I like that music to use it down the road there. So we have the music, or before he composes what we need. And let's say Irina is inspired with whatever music is out there right now, and then she starts rehearsing. So she rehearses with placeholder, so to speak, and then Constantine is composing similar world. So it depends. A lot of work happens during the tech. I call it like post-production kind of work, when you really go with the details and tiny things that you don't really even notice or think about it. So that's when it really comes together.
Thanks. I had the same question.
Yeah, it's a common question. Everybody's asking that. It's like, I don't know, chicken and egg.
Any other questions?
Silence.
Silence. We've been so thorough.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for being here.
Hey, have fun.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. It's great to see you. Absolutely. So,
Please go see The Tempest and Stormy Weather.
yeah, absolutely, both. So you just listening you